Welcome to the Google Cloud Update. I'm your host, bringing you the latest and greatest from across Google Cloud for the week of September 25th, 2025. We have a packed episode today, and there's a huge overarching theme. Gemini is coming to a command line near you. We'll talk about the massive expansion of agentic CLI experiences for BigQuery, Spanner, Firestore, and Cloud SQL. We'll also dive into some major general availability announcements, including a new way to talk to Spanner using the Cassandra interface and some fantastic performance boosts for networking and databases. And for those looking to the future, we'll touch on post-quantum cryptography in Cloud KMS. Let's jump right in. First up, let's talk developer experience with a couple of highly requested features for Cloud Run that are now generally available. For anyone who has managed environment variables, you'll be happy to hear that you can now set multiple environment variables at once using a standard .env file. This is a huge quality of life improvement that simplifies configuration management and makes your deployments much cleaner. This applies across the board to Cloud Run services, jobs, and worker pools. And for those of you mounting cloud storage buckets as volumes, you now have more granular control. You can now specify mount options when you configure those volumes. This means you can define permissions, caching behavior, and other file system level settings directly, which is incredibly useful for optimizing performance and security for your applications. Both of these updates are small, but they make a big difference in day-to-day development. Let's now get into the main event this week. Gemini is integrating directly into the G-Cloud CLI, bringing natural language interaction to a whole suite of data services. This provides what Google is calling an agentic CLI experience, allowing you to explore, manage, and query your data just by asking questions in plain English, right from your terminal. This is available in beta for several key products. First, for BigQuery, you can use the Gemini CLI extensions to search, explore, and analyze your data. Imagine typing forecast sales for next quarter based on the last 2 years of data and getting a result. That's the kind of power we're talking about. Next, we have dedicated Gemini CLI extensions for Firestore, Spanner, and all 3 flavors of Cloud SQL. That's MySQL, PostgreSQL, and SQL Server. For all of these databases, you can manage the full lifecycle, from provisioning instances and exploring schemas to troubleshooting issues, all using natural language commands. This is a massive productivity booster, especially for complex operations or for those who aren't fluent in every specific SQL dialect. Sticking with the data and analytics theme, we have a couple more powerful updates for BigQuery and Dataflow. First, BigQuery now lets you run federated queries against PostgreSQL dialect databases in Cloud Spanner, and this feature is now generally available. This means you can query your Spanner data directly from the BigQuery interface using Google SQL without moving or copying the data. This even includes support for cross-region federated queries, which is a game changer for analyzing distributed datasets. Over in Dataflow, there's a great new preview feature for batch pipelines that use GPUs. Dataflow now supports a flex start provisioning model. For short-duration workloads, this model can significantly improve your ability to acquire constrained GPU resources. Essentially, it gives you more flexibility and a better chance of getting the hardware you need when you need it for those quick, intensive jobs. Now let's do a deep dive into our managed databases, which saw a whole host of updates this week, starting with Cloud Spanner. Just like last week, this week brings another powerful GA feature for Spanner: read-lease regions. In a multi-region Spanner setup, strong reads typically have to go to the leader region, which can introduce latency. With read-leases, you can designate specific non-leader regions to serve those strong reads locally, eliminating that network round trip and dramatically reducing latency. Moving to Cloud SQL, there are updates across the board. For MySQL, a new minor version, 8.0.43, is now supported, and existing 8.4.5 instances are being upgraded to 8.4.6. For Postgres, the big news is that managed connection pooling is now GA. This helps you scale your workloads by optimizing database connections, preventing resource exhaustion, and you can now secure it using IAM authentication. And for all three Cloud SQL engines, MySQL, Postgres, and SQL Server, you can now retain point-in-time recovery logs for a specified period, even after you delete an instance. This is an amazing safety net, giving you the ability to restore a recently deleted instance if you ever need to. Moving over to networking and core infrastructure, several key features for VPC flow logs have now hit general availability. You can now enable VPC flow logs at the organization, VPC network, or subnet level through the Network Management API. This gives you flexible, top-down control over network traffic logging for monitoring and security. Also in networking, for those of you using Private Service Connect, service producers can now publish services that are hosted on cross-region internal application load balancers. This feature is now GA and makes it much easier to build robust, multi-region services that can be privately consumed by your customers. And a quick but important announcement for cloud logging users. The quota for write requests per minute has been removed. It's been replaced by more predictable, volume-based regional quotas. This should simplify capacity planning and prevent throttling based on request frequency alone. Now for our security corner, where we have updates from artifact analysis, sensitive data protection, and a very forward-looking one from Cloud KMS. First, in artifact analysis, layer-based vulnerability scanning is now in preview. This lets you inspect the vulnerability metadata for each specific layer of your container image digest directly from the G-Cloud CLI. This is incredibly useful for debugging and understanding exactly where a vulnerability was introduced in your build process. This is supported for Go, Java, Node.js, and Python images. In sensitive data protection, the service has expanded its detection capabilities. The invoice and medical record infotype detectors are now available in the global, Asia, Europe, and US multi-regions, helping you identify and protect more types of structured sensitive data. And finally, a really cool update from Cloud KMS. It now supports Key Encapsulation Mechanisms, or KEM, in preview. KEMs are a type of asymmetric cryptography designed to be resistant to attacks from future quantum computers. You can start experimenting with post-quantum algorithms like MLKEM 768, MLKEM 1024, and KEM X-Wing today, helping you future-proof the security of your secret sharing mechanisms. To round things out, let's look at infrastructure as code and client library updates. Two new versions of Config Connector are now available, 1.134.1 and 1.135.0. These releases bring a mix of bug fixes, including one for premature certificate rotation, and new beta resources like Asset Saved Query and PubSub Snapshot. The Alloy DB cluster resource also gets a new field for specifying the database version. We also saw a couple of notable library updates. The Python client for BigQuery, in version 3.38.0, now includes additional query stats, giving you more detailed performance information. And for the Python Spanner client, version 3.58.0 adds support for setting the read lock mode. A key dependency change to note here. This version also removes support for Python 3.7 and 3.8, so make sure your runtimes are up to date. And that's a wrap for this week's Google Cloud Update. From the massive rollout of Gemini in the CLI to major GA releases for Spanner, Cloud SQL, and VPC, there is a ton of new functionality to explore. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week for another dose of Google Cloud news.